Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome City Journal editor Brian Anderson.
Good evening. Good evening. If everybody could be seated, we'd like to get underway. Welcome to the 2024 City Journal Award. As the big voice said, I'm Brian Anderson, editor of City Journal, and I'm thrilled to be here to celebrate the individuals and organizations fighting for the freedoms that define America. And I'm thrilled, too, to see so many people here supporting the magazine's mission. It's really a great turnout. Tonight's recipient, the Washington Free Beacon, led by its superlative editor-in-chief, Eliana Johnson. They've been on the front lines of this battle, and we're also truly honored to have Barry Weiss here to present Eliana with the award. Barry is obviously a force of nature, and her remarkable free press has been transforming the media universe with its anti-woke and lively reporting. Now, I do have an important announcement to make this evening. City Journal will not be endorsing Kamala Harris for president. Now, I'm confident, however, that the number of our staffers who will resign and subscribers cancel in protest is probably zero. Reflecting on today's political landscape, especially when it comes to cities, it feels sometimes a little bit like 1990 when the Manhattan Institute launched City Journal as a small but ambitious quarterly to counter the prevailing views of the time. Back then, urban decay seemed unstoppable. Crime, failing schools, homelessness, welfare dependency, all of these were rampant, with New York at its modern-day nadir. The liberal press and elites at the time saw such decline as inexorable, inevitable, unless deep structural social injustices were overcome. The Manhattan Institute and City Journal challenged that pessimism by focusing on practical solutions and reporting on realities that the media ignored. Over the years, the magazine offered groundbreaking ideas, including welfare reform, proactive policing, and educational pluralism that were eventually adopted, at least in part, in New York and other American cities, really helping spark an urban revival. Unfortunately, we've again seen bad ideas proliferate. Cities and the nation as a whole are now grappling, as a result, with, among other problems, rising disorder as repeat offenders get swiftly returned to the streets, with schools that indoctrinate instead of teach, with an increasingly regulated economy that risks snuffing out entrepreneurial dynamism. New radical ideologies, such as the notion that biological sex is a social construct, or the characterization of America as irredeemably white supremacist, have emerged, damaging our society profoundly. At City Journal, now reaching millions of readers through the internet, we continue to confront such destructive ideas and offer a better path ahead. So let me offer just a few representative examples of what we've been up to over the last year. We just need to look around us to see one major focus: New York's migrant crisis. It has converted more than 100 city hotels into full-time shelters and is costing taxpayers billions of dollars now. Our Nicole Gelinas recently uncovered the self-dealing nature of the city's policies in this area, with a bonanza of no-bid contracts issued for migrant services providers, some of them politically connected to Mayor Adams' administration. Nicole's reporting on this crisis has been absolutely essential. On this issue and on so many others, City Journal's decades-long commitment to New York ensures that the city's civic health always remains at the forefront of our concerns. Beyond New York, consider the virtues and the writing of two previous awardees. A year ago, we recognized Christopher Rufo, and he's barely rested since. In the past year, Chris in City Journal, along with Aaron Sibarium in the Free Beacon, exposed former Harvard President Claudine Gay's scholarly plagiarism, ending her administrative reign. He reported on a Texas Children's Hospital whistleblower who documented the hospital's transgender medical interventions on teens and preteens. And he detailed how the Biden administration has subsidized the criminal gang madness in Aurora, Colorado. All of these became national stories, and that's just a small sample of Chris's work. His ongoing guerrilla actions are shaking the nation's political terrain in seismic ways. He's probably public enemy number 3 for the left these days, after Donald Trump and Elon Musk. In 2022, we celebrated a writer long associated with the magazine, Heather McDonald. Over the past year, Heather has reported on, among other things, the Ivy League leadership's disastrous response to the 2023 Hamas terror attacks in Israel, the persistence of DEI in various institutions of American life, including the Boy Scouts, and California's little-known Racial Justice Act, which could soon unleash what she calls a crime catastrophe on that state's cities. Everything Heather does exhibits her relentless commitment to finding the truth. If, as the Democratic pollster Rex Teixeira said last week, the progressive moment may be coming to an end, Chris Rufo and Heather McDonald have done their part in making that happen. Now, we publish at City Journal everything from policy wonkery to literary essays, but journalism of the kind that Nicole, Heather, and Chris pursue has always been at the heart of the magazine's project. Putting faces to the abstractions of policy choices makes the stakes in real lives clear and can have disruptive effects on public debate, as I think the examples of the Free Beacon and Free Press also show. The Manhattan Institute's Logos initiative, headed by Chris Rufo, seeks to cultivate a new generation of reporting talent for City Journal and amplify this effect dramatically. Now, our coverage has spanned many other issues this year, from the alarming rise of anti-Semitism on American campuses to the need to build more and better prisons, from the fallacies of gender-affirming care to the quest for sane homelessness policies. A magazine is only as good as its writers, and we have some of the very best in the world exploring these and other vital topics. Such work is more vital now than ever with the legacy media's adoption of what you can only call a propagandistic role in promoting whatever the left currently wants you to think, whether it's Joe Biden being sharp as a tack, or the idea that the nation was founded in 1619, or that the First Amendment needs to be reconsidered. We have the advantage, and here I speak on behalf of the entire City Journal team, to belong to a cutting-edge organization that, under the brilliant leadership of President Reihan Salam and his predecessor, Larry Moen, both of them here tonight, recognizes the worth of publishing a serious magazine of ideas that can serve as an alternative to politically one-sided mainstream journalism. Thankfully, we also have some of the best and most courageous trustees we could hope for, and in conclusion, I'd just like to acknowledge those here this evening: Ann Charters, Kathy Crow, Betsy DeVos, Susie Edelman, Michael Fedak, Ken Gilman, Roger Kimball, Joe Crystal, Nick O'Neill, Russ Penoyer, Nathan St. Amand, and Tom Smith. None of what we do, absolutely none of what we do would be possible without their backing and vision. And to this event's generous patrons and benefactors, we're also deeply grateful. And again, let me just list them: the Edelman Family Foundation, the Onell Family Foundation, Liz Lang and David Shapiro, the Thomas W. Smith Foundation, the Bonson Group, Joe Popolo, Andrew and Corey Morris Singer, Tom and Ann Charters, the Washington Free Beacon, Kathy and Harlan Crow, Ken Gilman and Carol Feinberg, the Lewis H. Johnson Family Foundation, Momona and Richard Royce, and the Esther and Hyman Report Philanthropic Trust, and the American Priorities Committee. Really, thank you so much. By investing in City Journal and the Manhattan Institute, you're betting on a future in which common sense ideas expressed with evidence and rigor can sway minds, and we really hope we continue to earn the trust that you've shown in us. Barry Weiss will be out later to introduce Elena and the Free Beacon. So please enjoy dinner, and thanks again for being here tonight.
Some of you may not have heard of the Washington Free Beacon.
A bunch of, kind of pro-Trump commentators started this.
A conservative website posted some documents.
Right-wing website.
Efficient, conservative news machine.
But whether you're aware of it or not, you've seen the impact of our reporting.
It was attached to, I think, the Free Beacon and Republicans.
The Washington Free Beacon does the reporting that the mainstream media won't, whether out of incompetence or ideological bias.
America's most prestigious academic institutions are facing a political crisis.
3 deans at the center of a texting controversy have resigned.
Tim Walz is facing scrutiny.
The New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, CNN, these are places that have thousands of reporters. We have 25.
We hold ourselves, I think, to the same standards for accuracy and rigor as mainstream media. The difference is that we report on topics that the mainstream media often won't cover.
But it was not a small job. Like, I did the fries. I mean,
Raise a family. I worked there as a student. I was a kid.
You'll see the Free Beacon's impact at a debate.
You said you were in Hong Kong during the deadly Tiananmen Square protest. Can you explain the discrepancy?
I got there that summer and misspoke. That's what I've said. And I'm a knucklehead at times.
Claudine Gay will never forget us.
Multiple allegations of plagiarism in Harvard President Claudine Gay's writing came to light, according to the Free Beacon.
So much of the media environment in DC is access-based, wanting to be kind to people so that they're happy with you. The whole point of the Beacon was, no, we want to be mean to you. F you.
Within 24 hours, Ms. Gay resigned from her post.
The Free Beacon. Free Beacon.
Free Beacon.
A new investigation by the Washington Free Beacon.
My name is Jessica Costesco. I'm a reporter with the Washington Free Beacon.
By my count, there have been 6 or 7 officials that I can think of off the top of my head that the Beacon has gotten canned.
For those who care about the fight against the enemies of freedom at home and abroad, reporting is a potent tool in the fight against them.
If someone gets an email requesting comment from the Free Beacon and it genuinely makes them afraid, we're doing our job right.
We're recording the sizzle reel for the Beacon and want to know, how would you describe the Beacon?
On its best days, a ruthless killing machine.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Free Press founder and editor, Barrett.
Hi, everybody. I'm not Eliana Johnson. She's the skinnier, hotter version of me. You'll hear from her in a minute. I am so excited to be here to introduce my fellow neocon warmonger, Eliana Johnson, and to celebrate the achievements of the ruthless killing machine known as the Washington Free Beacon. When Matt Continetti and Michael Goldfarb launched the thing in 2012, Matt wrote this: "At the Beacon, all friends of freedom will find an alternative to the hackneyed spin, routine misstatements, paranoid hyperbole of Democratic officials, and the liberal gas bags on MSNBC and talk radio. At the Beacon, we follow only one commandment: do unto them." And since then, that is just what the Beacon has done, and oh, it has done. And no one has done more than Eliana Johnson, the Beacon's current editor-in-chief. Hers is a name that makes Ivy League presidents wet themselves. Hers is a name that sends DEI bureaucrats headed for their underground bunkers. Hers is a name that makes the Ayatollahs in Tehran tremble. A name that strikes fear into the hearts of so many in Washington, including many of the people she actually works with. Eliana Johnson stands at 5'2" and is probably like 100 pounds soaking wet, but she is a journalistic giant, and it is work that runs in the blood, in her case, quite literally. Her dad, where's her dad? Where's Scott? Her dad, Scott Johnson, was one of the founders, of course, of Powerline, where he was responsible for dethroning Dan Rather and became the world's foremost scholar on sibling marriage in the expat Somali community. Now, for a time it seemed like Eliana Johnson was gonna go the traditional route. At Politico, she was the White House correspondent, a fancy job. She had a gig at CNN. One wondered when the New York Times would come calling for this daughter of Minnesota. But it was not the gray lady that came calling. It was Michael Goldfarb, elder of Zion. She followed that right-wing siren song, and CNN dropped her faster than being able to write a resignation letter. Eliana is a trailblazer in more ways than one. For starters, I hear her mother is Peruvian, which means she's the first Latinx woman to lead the Washington Free Beacon. Now, under her tenure, the Free Beacon has greatly diversified its staff, hiring several women, and even, I hear, some non-Jewish men. Over the past 5 years as editor-in-chief, Eliana has built the Beacon into something formidable, unignorable, and I have to admit it, a publication whose scoops frequently make me seethe with envy. Just over there, someone came up to me to compliment us on a Free Press scoop, and Eliana kind of grabbed him by the scruff of the neck and said, "Why didn't you come to us first?" She is absolutely ruthless. Just think about some of the stories that the Beacon has published during Eliana's leadership this year alone. Of course, the plagiarism stories that led to the downfall of Claudine Gay. Wow, yes. Or the scoop that a couple of days ago proved that Kamala Harris plagiarized pages of congressional testimony, which in truth was kind of an easy thing to figure out because the plagiarized sections were the ones that actually made sense. Or the Fani Willis whistleblower story, the debunking of Tim Walz's claims that he was in Hong Kong during Tiananmen Square. Or that fun little anti-Semitic group chat with Columbia administrators that led to the resignations of 3 campus administrators. Or the 10-month legal battle to obtain Ruben Gallego's divorce records, which were just unsealed by the Arizona Supreme Court. The UCLA Medical School's affirmative action scandal. And most importantly of all, an investigation into whether Kamala Harris really worked at McDonald's. The fact that she said, "I did fries," sorry, that should have raised eyebrows for everybody. But perhaps her greatest coup was trying to take out Biden before Kamala and Nancy Pelosi via her cousin, Dean Phillips, the Talenti Gelato King. I did not know they were related until I was doing research for this. Now, the Free Beacon is not a normal place to work, not at all. How could it be with misfits like Adam Credo, Andrew Stiles, Aaron Sabarium, Alana Goodman, and Chuck Ross, to name just a few? In Aaron's case, a major part of Eliana's job is to tell him when to get a haircut before going on Fox, and Aaron, the answer is always, every single time. Now, I spoke to a few of Eliana's colleagues in preparation for this. The Free Press's mantra, one said, is covering the enemies of freedom. But Eliana took that very literally and actually smothered her enemies to death. I'm joking, of course, he said. Some of the Beacon's enemies of freedom were obliterated by drones as well. That's Vic Mattis talking, and he added this. This isn't to say that Eliana is all about intimidation and terror. No. She never talks down to people unless she's in heels, and even then, it's not many people, maybe just Adam Credo. Sorry, Adam. Now, here's Aaron Sabarium on Eliana. Machiavelli argued that it's better to be feared than loved, but best to be both loved and feared. He would therefore find a lot to admire about Eliana's reign at the Free Beacon. As editor, all of her colleagues said to me that Eliana is unafraid to give blunt criticism. I know of at least one occasion where she referred to a writer's rough draft as simply shit. She is very, very subtle, as those of us who know her can attest. But after a rewrite, she offered this: good job. It was a tough one, and you made Shinola out of shit. Subtlety, of course, is a quality that Eliana Johnson is known for. My only criticism of Eliana, Michael Goldfarb told me, is that she's just so inscrutable, so impossible to read. What is she thinking? I wondered to myself. Does she actually have a high opinion of that anchor on CNN? What does she really mean when she says, "I wish that dumb slut would die in a fire"? Now, despite her ruthlessness, all of her colleagues say she's almost always right. When I asked Aaron Sabarium what the most important advice he ever got from Eliana was, he told me without pause, "Don't tweet that." Now, that doesn't mean she doesn't love to have a good time. She loves her martinis strong and dirty, and it's hard to go a few sentences in a conversation with Eliana without a word that would be bleeped out on cable news. A Jew that drinks, drops F-bombs, and demands scoops from her reporters, now that is what I call a perfect woman. All of which is why I keep trying to hire Eliana, very shamelessly. But how can we at the Free Press possibly compete with a place that has the truth monkey as its mascot and bombs in its logo? So for now, I'm settling for this warm-up act, announcing her for an award that she and the Free Beacon richly deserve. The City Journal Award, the award that we're here to celebrate tonight, recognizes those whose ideas have pushed back on destructive policies and inspired efforts to protect the liberties of all Americans. In short, it is an award to recognize people and institutions that believe in freedom and fight for it, even when it's unpopular. In winning this award, Eliana and the Beacon join the esteemed company of Attorney General Bill Barr, journalist Heather McDonald, and Chris Rufo, truly a blunt rotation from hell. Eliana and the Beacon are fearless and ferociously independent. They say about the U.S. Marines that there is no greater friend and no worse enemy. The same is true of my friend Eliana Johnson and of the Washington Free Beacon. Please welcome Eliana Johnson.
Thank you all so much, and thank you, Barry. Sort of perverse to give someone an award and then make them come speak after Barry Weiss. Doesn't really feel so awardy, but it is a privilege to be here among the editors, writers, and readers of publications like City Journal and the Free Press, who are on the front lines of the battle for truth, and it's a privilege to be here representing the Washington Free Beacon. This isn't the first time my path has crossed with Barry's. In fact, when I stepped into the New York Sun's newsroom, which was my very first job, our great editor, Seth Lipsky, said to me, "There's a young woman you need to meet at Columbia University. Her name is Barry Weiss." So we go back about 20 years to when I was a staff writer at the Sun, and Barry was at Columbia, just getting started making trouble. But if you want the chance to praise Barry these days, well, get in line behind several billionaires. Barry is, of course, the editor who resigned in spectacular fashion from the New York Times, tossing a grenade over her shoulder as she waltzed out the door. The public comeuppance that Barry delivered to the Times, a powerful and deeply corrupt institution, is the sort of thing that we at the Washington Free Beacon admire. So to receive an award from City Journal and to have it presented by a friend like Barry is all the confirmation we need that the Washington Free Beacon is doing the work that we are meant to do. Before I continue, I want to ask you all to take a moment of silence in solidarity with the oppressed editors and reporters at the Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times, whose owners won't let them publish endorsements of Kamala Harris. The black-hearted billionaires Jeff Bezos and Patrick Soon-Shiong have deprived the nation of, how did Barry put it in her famous New York Times resignation letter, the 4,000th op-ed, warning that Trump is a unique danger to the country and the world? Well, thoughts and prayers for Jeff and Patrick. Being in a room like this reminds me that there's a thoughtful and passionate readership of brilliant people who want an alternative to the dominant news media, as does at least half the country. This award, of course, is for everybody at the Beacon. My colleagues and I are honored and we're grateful to the Manhattan Institute. I especially want to thank Brian Anderson, City Journal's editor, and Raihan Salam, Raihan Salam, the Manhattan Institute's wonderful president and my longtime friend and former colleague at National Review. City Journal and the Free Beacon have a lot in common, and I think that starts with the kind of readers and writers we appeal to. People who are looking for independence of mind, ideas without hidden agendas, and an escape from suffocating conformity. We are witnessing an unprecedented moment when it comes to the dominant news media. They are abjectly desperate, doing everything they can to stop Donald Trump from returning to power. Any pretense to objectivity, even the fake objectivity in which they have typically wrapped themselves, has been discarded. I looked at the New York Times homepage this morning on a day when the most sophisticated election analysts say this is the closest presidential election they've ever seen, and these were the headlines. An ethical minefield awaits a possible second Trump presidency. Harris to speak at ellipse as Trump faces rally fallout. A new insult reminds Puerto Ricans of how Trump treated them. Inside Trump's Truth Social conspiracy theory machine. Where's Ivanka? Long ago, Trump long ago crossed from propriety into profanity. Then came the garden. Trump's environmental claims ignore decades of climate science. Not an article to be found about Kamala Harris, and we don't know the election result yet, but we do know that the media has lost. They're being roundly rejected by half the country who are looking for and finding alternatives, and there's an exciting new space being filled by publications like City Journal and the Washington Free Beacon, which are growing and thriving. Because we're free to think for ourselves, we don't wake up in the morning wondering what fashionable opinions we have to adopt. At the Free Beacon, we don't have to assume a lazy posture of contempt for our country, its founding ideals, or our Western inheritance. Unlike the New York Times, we don't falsely report that Israel bombed a hospital, and we don't devolve into internal feuding as the staff seeks to tear down a carefully reported article describing the rape and sexual violence perpetrated by Hamas on October 7th. Unlike the Washington Post, we don't criticize the American family members of a Jewish hostage for their failure to recognize the suffering of Palestinians in Gaza, and we don't refer to hostages as missing. And unlike ABC News, we don't try to throw a presidential debate to Kamala Harris by engaging in a deeply embarrassing exercise we try to call fact-checking. Unlike CBS News, we don't slam our reporters for asking tough questions of Ta-Nehisi Coates. At the Free Beacon, we are instead free to point out the obvious, that America and Israel have been a force for good like no other in the world, and that they are always worth defending. Our motto at the Free Beacon defines our mission, covering the enemies of freedom the way the mainstream media won't. We don't have agonizing editorial meetings straining to establish moral equivalency between Israel and the terrorist groups trying to destroy it. We don't show deference to members of Congress who defame and malign a democratic ally of the United States. We know what the stakes are, and you will always find us on the side of the people of Israel. Like the dominant media, our finest colleges and universities are also in an advanced state of decay. At City Journal, you all know this as well as I do. If a publication's beat is wokeness, dishonesty, and pomposity, you will never run out of material on America's college campuses. But you do actually have to look for it. To really have impact, you need good reporting. It took dogged reporting to reveal how completely unqualified a president of Harvard was for a job she has since vacated. It took relentless reporting to get 3 Columbia deans relieved of duty for their anti-Semitic text messages. And when politicians tell us about themselves, it takes skepticism and serious reporting to spot the BS. If Tim Walz claims he was in Hong Kong during the Tiananmen Square massacre, but the timeline puts him in Minnesota, or Kamala Harris claims without evidence that she once worked a summer job at McDonald's, or Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas insists he's handling a hurricane when he's shopping for shoes in Georgetown. None of that rates a fact check at the Washington Post, but you'll get one from the Washington Free Beacon. At the Free Beacon and City Journal, we do what's considered right-wing journalism. It's actually journalism. What sets us apart, really? It's questioning assumptions and not accepting at face value the assertions of politicians or flacks. It's challenging the latest dogma, examining claims to see whether they really hold up. It's what the major media claims to do, but time and again, they happen to drop the ball when the subject is a Democrat. I admit, as Barry mentioned, I did one stream of Rising in the mainstream media. We were all young and stupid once. I learned there that the caliber of people doesn't always match the top-tier reputations, that you are accepted less for your reportorial skill than for adopting approved opinions and attitudes, and that the groupthink can be so rigid that it takes just one dissenter, one Barry Weiss, to induce a collective psychological meltdown. About the time I realized that I didn't belong and didn't even want to, Free Beacon chairman Michael Goldfarb came along with a job offer and said of my current gig, "Is this really what you want to spend the rest of your life doing?" The guy knows how to sell. But in truth, the Free Beacon has felt like a step up in every way, and signing up was the best professional decision I ever made. Your award tonight recognizes the work of the smart, talented, and thoroughly impressive people I'm lucky to call my colleagues, as well as the creativity and fearlessness of the Beacon's founders, Michael Goldfarb, Matthew Continetti, and Aaron Harrison. They have some important characteristics that distinguish them from mainstream media reporters. They're not full of themselves. They're not smug, and they don't have disdain for this country. Those are qualities I saw at home growing up too. As Barry mentioned, my dad worked as an attorney but dabbled in journalism on the side. I always got the sense from him that it was the journalism he considered the important work. Years ago, he founded Powerline blog. They've broken several big stories, including the scandal that unraveled CBS News and ended Dan Rather's career. And yes, no less an authority than Donald J. Trump has recognized him as America's foremost expert on Ilhan Omar's illegal and illegitimate marriage to her own brother. One report of which was published in City Journal. My mom is warm and kind, and nobody has ever told me that I take after her. Except that she happens to be the world's best holder of grudges, and I excel at that. In case I haven't made it clear, the City Journal Award means the world to us at the Free Beacon. To receive an award from people like you and to celebrate it with a room full of people whose support and good opinion we actually value, that's preferable and more meaningful to us than 1,000 Pulitzer Prizes. Not that we'd ever win one. Thank you all so much.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome back to the stage City Journal editor Ryan Anderson.
I'm just saying good night. Thank you, Eliana. Thank you all for coming, and really appreciate the support for the kind of journalism we're doing. So thank you, Barry. Thank you, Eliana, and thank all of you. Good night.